So at the end of activity 1, it asks you to comment on what you can tell about the roots of an equation based off of the discriminant. So the roots of the equation of a quadratic equation can be found from the quadratic formula. Now you notice that we have the b squared minus 4ac, or we call it the discriminant, is a part of the quadratic formula. It's the part that is underneath the square root sign. Well, what we notice here is that when our discriminant is a positive number, so when it is greater than 0, what we actually are going to have are two real distinct roots. So this means that they are different, and they're two real numbers, so numbers that exist normally for us, and they're two different ones. Now, that's because the square root of a positive number is another number, and when we add or subtract that from something else, we get two different things. Now, if the discriminant happens to be 0, then that means we're adding and subtracting 0 from something. Well, when we do that, we end up with the same number. So what happens when our discriminant is 0 is we have two real equal roots. So they're the same thing, but there's actually two of them, and that's important to keep in mind. It'll come up much later in your math careers. And then lastly, if we have a discriminant that is less than 0, or a negative number, what's happening in the quadratic formula is you're taking the square root of a negative number, which we cannot do with reals. You would end up with imaginary or complex numbers, complex numbers with an imaginary component. So these have 0 real roots or no real roots. So we don't know what these are in the real number system. We had to look into another number system to figure out what to do with them. But this is something that we're going to follow the rest of the unit, and also the section. So please keep in mind, these things mean them. They are the same thing. If I say that the discriminant is greater than 0, that means that we have two real and distinct roots. Conversely, if I tell you that a quadratic equation has two real distinct roots, that means that the discriminant must be greater than 0, and we can use that to help solve other problems. Likewise, for our discriminant equaling 0 or less than 0, those mean things for us. And so we can use either side, either the blue statements or the green statements, together because they mean the same thing. They're both going to be true at the same time.